you've also must have seen that there was this whole TV versus digital debate, and the reality is that can also be a and conversation where TV helps you reach out to the masses who are not connected to digital, while digital can help you scale where there is a lot of penetration. So do you see that and conversation about CTV and short form too?
It has to be an and conversation because people don't live their lives in parts. They're moving continuously through their lives, right? As a marketeer, you need to be there whenever they are interested in watching whatever they are interested in watching.
So I think you've already figured where Shubha is working, and most likely you might not need me for this conversation. You could just have these Q&As fired up at her and get all your answers. But for the sake of this format and for my relevance as well, I thought like I'll have this chat with Shubha. So Shubha, to understand and like because the theme of the event is so about festive marketing, so to understand from your perspective, I think there is so much that happens during the festive season. It's like in the intros and even when I spoke, I said that how big the season is for any brand or even business for that matter. I think almost half of the revenue that a brand would generate comes from festive or comes from the efforts they might have done during the festive period. And that makes this time very critical. And every year you can't completely with yesterday's playbooks. So I want to understand from you, what is it that is changing in the festive ad spends, and what is it that the marketers of today should be knowing about it?
Well, thank you. First of all, that's very, very humble of you. You're very, very relevant to this, and thank you for the opportunity. And I'm very happy to be here. So, hi everyone. Like you said in your opening note, festive is very important to me as well. It's my favorite time of the year. And I was discussing with you backstage as well that I come from Bangalore, and for us, festive kicks off actually with Nag Panchami. So that's what heralds the start of the festive season. So we are kind of smack in the middle of it right now. If you're in the south, Varmahalakshmi is another big festival which follows Nag Panchami. Then of course you have Janmashtami. You have some version of Raksha Bandhan. It's not as big in the south as it is in the rest of the country. And then you've had Ganesh Chaturthi. So there's a lot that's happened. And Onam, how can we forget Onam? So there's a lot that's already happened. I like how you articulated you can't use last year's playbook or the past playbook for current years. It's because the shift is very apparent. Things are changing so rapidly. For example, YouTube has emerged as the new TV now. And I don't just say that. Connected TV has been a fastest growing screen for us for the last 5 years continuously. And it is at the other end, it almost seems paradoxical because Shorts has had a blitzkrieg growth as well. And day after tomorrow, we celebrate all things YouTube for an event called the YouTube Brandcast, where we will be unveiling a lot of stats. So therefore, I can't share them with you. It'll be like giving the thunder away. But Shorts has exploded, CTV has exploded. And the most interesting thing is people who are watching Shorts on connected TV. I think YouTube is the only platform in the country with this confluence of these two seemingly very different viewing formats, which is happening together. So Shorts viewership on connected TV has doubled between last year and this year. And another interesting thing is, when you're watching Shorts on your mobile phone, you're scrolling rapidly, and therefore the view-through rates, like the time I spend watching something, is relatively slower because that's the sort of leaned-out casual viewing moment. But on the connected TV, I watch it like I watch any content on the big screen. So my view-through rates actually are a lot better. On average, on connected TV, 50% of what content people spend time on is 20 minutes, 21 minutes or longer. Because fundamentally, it combines whatever is good about traditional linear TV viewing experience. You're sitting with your friends and family likely. It's a shared viewing experience on the big screen, so you're a lot more patient. All of that is true. But what is different is you've moved from broadcast to on-demand, on discovery. And I think the MC said earlier that Shorts are for discovery. People are also discovering content on Shorts, on the connected TV, and also with search. So think about your behavior with your mobile phone over the last 24 hours. it's likely that you have searched, shopped, scrolled. One of these you've done and streamed, likely streamed some content at your home, right? And consumers are shifting between these behaviors. If you really think about it, all these behaviors are playing out on the connected TV as well. So firstly, what marketers need to think about is, how do I plug myself into these moments? And yes, Google and YouTube are two platforms that lend themselves. They are part of these four. If you think about it, between search and YouTube and everything that happens on YouTube, that's where the action is, that's where the consumer is at. So that's one. The second thing is, how do you then maximize these experiences? For example, if you are watching the connected TV, or if your consumer is watching the connected TV, how do you create experiences that are deeply immersive? It captures your attention, it stands out. There are a lot of brands now that are available and advertising intensity will go up. I mean, clutter will maximize during the festive season because, like you said, 50% plus of revenues are made for a lot of brands in the second half of the year. And therefore, it's important to be seen. But whether it is through creative, whether it is through media orchestration, whether it is through using AI, whether it is through using rich immersive formats. So for example, instead of like a static ad that appears on YouTube when you're watching content on the big screen, if you design immersive edge-to-edge creatives, which we call the immersive masthead, that cuts through very, very differently. It captures attention from the word go. Similarly, of course, you could do, have a edit of your TV ad and run it like shorts. Is that the most optimal, respectful thing for the user? Likely not, because your story arc is very different when you tell stories on the big screen, long format versus on the short format. Could you maybe partner with a creator? We'd like to think of creators as festive icons. And there are behaviors that we see which are very distinct around the festive period. So last year, between August and November, searches for Raksha Bandhan sweet recipes, searches for Navratri sweet recipes spiked by about 300%. We saw similar spikes for casual makeup, for festive season, and such terms. And we were discussing how, even in my household for Ganesh Chaturthi, and I'm not a great singer, but during the Aarti and Puja, we will play the playlist and it'll be playing on the connected TV. You don't actively think about this when you are behaving like that. But when you do, you realize how deeply integrated YouTube is in people's lives and what opportunities you're actually missing out on. How could you be leveraging these opportunities? So that's my long and short of it.
Right. So I get the sense that you mentioned about CTV exploding and short form video exploding. But do you think the marketers of today recognize this shift, that this consumer behavior shift also that happens towards CTV? And if they do so, what is it that they're doing to align themselves to this revolution? Are they I won't say innovators in this sense, but are they adopting to this early, or this is still these insights are still resting with platforms and marketers are yet to test this?
That's a good question, because we have an entire spectrum. As with any shift, there are a few people who will be risk takers, who will kind of go on the path, create the path, who will experiment a lot. And we were discussing how you should, ideally as marketers in today's time, set aside some budget for experimentation as a rule, like every quarter. Because there is so much happening in the ecosystem, and during festive is likely not when you want to test something because the stakes are too high. So hopefully rest of the year you've kind of done enough of testing and learning, and you kind of have a strategy now that you're very confident about, or reasonably confident about, which you can deploy. So we do see customers at the both ends of the spectrum. The immersive format that I was talking to you about, the masthead one, now Flipkart, also full disclosure, very partial to Flipkart because I worked there before I joined Google. And if you've seen their recent ad, what a bold 3-minute long ad. How many of you have seen it? The Kuch Bhi Ho Sakta Hai. In a time where we talk about, it's a very lazy excuse. We say, oh, consumers don't have, this is a short form video era and no one has attention. People are being very, very deliberate about what they are choosing to put their attention on. So it's a nice, long, rich, very, very content-like creative, which has had, I think in the last 1 week or so, I just saw this morning, about 117 million views. And these are ads that get searched. people are looking, I mean, imagine, usually you have to why for user attention. These are the ads that go viral in a way that people are searching to say, "Hey, everyone is talking about this ad, what's so unique about it?" So there are trailblazers like that. And therefore, you find those examples. I remember this one particular integration that Asian Paints had done last year. It was close to festive. I think it went live around August, September. And this was for a line of paints which is very big in rural India. Now we talk about how internet is a democratizing level playing field, etc. But very few marketers are putting their money behind it. And of course, it has to do with whether that segment is relevant for the product or service you sell. And they partnered with regional YouTube creators, Marathi, Haryanvi, and these are unapologetic pieces of content IP that they put out there for this paint. In Haryana, it spoke about an akhada, it spoke about a sabzi mandi, it spoke about, so there are different, very, very local examples where they leveraged it. Phenomenal results, from searches going up to brand awareness going up. So there are marketeers who are experimenting, as well as marketeers who are sort of still watching from the sidelines and not really believing how big CTV is as a phenomena. There are about 75 million viewers now who are reached, who are consuming connected TV, YouTube connected TV, and this is a very, very big number. But a lot of marketers find it very hard to believe. So yeah, there are customers across the spectrum, those who are boldly going ahead and testing it out, and those who are still waiting.
So this question is for those who are still waiting. What are some of the unique strengths you feel that CTV as a medium offers to marketers, and why is it, probably a couple of reasons as to why a marketer should be very, I won't say bullish, but should at least experiment in full stead with CTV as a medium?
See, one is the reach itself. Secondly, if your user base, who you want to reach are urban, slightly more affluent users, then it should be an always-on medium, because there is viewership happening actively. The other reason is, let's say you are a TV-first advertiser. Everything, as I said, that linear TV, traditional TV brings, connected TV brings that as well. But over and above that, you can be super precise. You can lean into AI formats, as well as AI to create insights, to generate creatives. And you can make it super personal to the person who's watching. And the last bit is the actionability. So we're very excited, actually, because this year we've launched shoppable CTV, we've launched shoppable masthead. The goal is to make sure that every surface becomes in some way a surface where you can take action. So that's very important to YouTube. So that's something that we're doing. Last year, we launched QR codes. A lot of the ads, if you're a consumer of YouTube on the big screen, you will realize that ads end with QR codes. These are sort of like your send to mobile vehicles. And we saw Kia Motors do this brilliantly when they launched their car. And it's not just some vanity metric. They were actually able to see a bump in their opted-in test drives. So this is like the last mile conversion for a car, which is a high involvement category. So that's one thing which sets it apart. And then measurability. So everything that's good about digital, including measurement, is something that you have, which you didn't have as clearly and as neatly on linear TV. So all of these set the connected TV experience apart.
So I understand it's TV with the strength of digital, and I remember the pre-event discussion that we were having where you're talking about how it helps you access people who are not just cord cutters, but people who are cord nevers. Yeah. So now to the other medium that we've been speaking about, from a short form perspective, what is it that a marketer should know about shorts, and why is it that they should be very invested in a medium like shorts?
Firstly, the scale and the relevance, right? It's massive. You can't deny the impact of it. In fact, there was a recent BCG media report which spoke about how people use mobile phones in their non-smoking but smoking breaks, which is where you just quickly pop out, you just scroll through a few shorts and you kind of come back. You don't even realize you're kind of doing it. Those are moments which have just increased. And then, of course, there is a active, I'm commuting and I have some time and therefore I can scroll through shorts. The one thing that is interesting about shorts is here's where we see a lot of partnership with creators coming alive, because I'm used to seeing creators on this format. It seems very, very organic. YouTube is also the platform where, which inspires a lot of trust in both creators as well as creator-made content. One of the highest across all social OTT formats. It's also a great way, like we said earlier, to discover content. And the same holds true for TV. I used to make fun of one of my teammates for watching shorts on CTV, and she laughed at me today because I'm going to talk about it, because it's become a thing that is a thing now. And the reason for that is oftentimes I have not yet decided what I want to watch. And then I'm scrolling through shorts on the connected TV screen. I see something either from an OTT player, or I see content from my favorite creator. It's a teaser. It's almost like a hook. It hooks you in. Right. And then you're like, okay, this looks interesting. Maybe this is a stand-up comic content. I want to watch this. And so now Shorts has introduced you to something. You've discovered something new that has caught your attention. It's hooked you in. And then I go watch the long-form version of it. I keep saying this to our media and entertainment partners, that we're the recruitment engine for a lot of your content on your platform. And it's true. Even during IPL, right? For example, if I'll watch if there's an RCB match, I'm from Bangalore, maybe I'm not too keen on other players playing, but maybe my favorite creator made a video about it. And suddenly I'm thinking, maybe, I have time in the evening, why don't I watch this match? So Shorts is a very, very good hook into whatever it is that you want to drive attention towards. And partnering with creators is the way to go when you think about Shorts.
Got it. And I think it's like probably creator or a publisher bias as well, or even an industry bias in general, that whenever we see two emerging mediums, whenever we see two newer formats coming through, the natural intent is to say that A versus B, like CTC versus short form, or CTV or short form in that sense. Do you think there is a possibility, because I think we've been living this the last 2 decades, you also must have seen that there was this whole TV versus digital debate. And the reality is that it can also be a and conversation where TV helps you reach out to the masses who are not connected to digital, while digital can help you scale where there is a lot of penetration. So do you see that and conversation about CTV and short form too? And why do you think probably a CTV and short form can become a growth engine for brands during the festive season?
It has to be an and conversation, because people don't live their lives in parts. They're moving continuously through their lives, right? They wake up in the morning, maybe they go through a certain behavior where they're watching something on Shorts. They go through their day snacking on some content. Maybe someone sent them a link, so they watched a slightly longish video on their phones. They got back home and now they're watching, it's their leaned in moment, so they're watching the connected TV. Now, as a marketeer, your goal is to reach a certain set of customers a certain number of times in certain number of ways that creates those memory structures and helps them the moment they're in the moment to buy your brand, or the segment in which your brand plays, your brand hopefully is in the consideration set. That's your ultimate goal. So you need to be there whenever they are interested in watching whatever they are interested in watching. And I think one of the advantages of digital is that kind of targeting, right? So let's say you're targeting cord nevers. So an overwhelming 65% of people above the age 18 that are there on YouTube are only there on YouTube. They are incremental to even TV, which means that you're not going to find them anywhere. And cord cutters and cord nevers is not just now fancy phrasing, it's a reality. We were discussing backstage that if you go try buying a TV today, you're not going to buy a linear TV. You're not going to find a linear TV. By default, the TV that is being sold in the market is a smart TV. So if you think about what in the, we used to call media dark geographies, parts of UP, Bihar, where electrification has not yet happened, therefore traditional media doesn't reach. As electrification starts to happen and those households go and buy a TV, the first TV they're buying is a smart TV. So they're leapfrogging directly to connected TV. And we don't think actively about this, but that's their first experience. And if you think to the urban India, younger younger folks, they are doing this by choice. I mean, I don't understand why I need linear TV, why I need cable connection. I can just get TV, and it gives you an option, so many different OTTs, right? Not just YouTube. Therefore, this whole by demand viewing is the single biggest sort of shift in this entire ecosystem. And that's what we are seeing play out. And if you throw in everything else we spoke about from a measurability, reach, etc. lens, it makes sense. To your question about the either or part of it, now that you know that there is a confluence of short form on long, like on CTV, now that you know that people are just, they're doing both because they can. There's nothing to it. I enjoy watching short form content because it solves certain needs. Maybe I have that much time. I watch long form content as well. Therefore, as marketers, why should you choose either or? And they complement each other in other ways as well. You can tell a longer story, get people give people more context when they're watching on the big TV, big screen. You can partner with a bunch of creators. I don't know if you all have seen it or not, but I get shown a lot of insurance and banking ads now, which are creator first. The relatability of a category that is as, I'm sorry if there are insurance folks here, but it's a boring category, right? I mean, but only a creator can come in and grab my attention. I remember, or a credit card, a new credit card which has specific savings, etc. Therefore, partnering with creators, which is why I call them the festive icons, partnering with them and ensuring that on the short form, they are helping you complement the nice ad film that you've created, which is like either a 30-second or like Flipkart, a 3-minute ad, is I think making sure that there is both depth as well as, or there is more engagement as well as there is scale that you're able to get. And there are cost advantages as well to making sure that you use both formats.
So conventionally, I feel that with medium, say, even the intro was saying about how CTV could give depth and short could give discovery.
Yeah.
And you said that like all of it is very fluid at this point in time. I think conventionally we are all aligned to think that there are some platforms which help you go deep, and then there are some which help you go wide. While with the emergence of platforms and mediums such as this, the possibility is there to go deep and wide at the same time.
Yeah, I think it depends on your creativity, because let's say you want to explain a complicated product. You can the creators will do a bang up job of telling you how this works, and people will listen because the creator is far more engaging than any brand creative that you can make. Plus, it'll be far more expensive to make a brand creative, tie up with some ambassador or whatever. I'm not saying that that you shouldn't do that. Flipkart ad is rich in Bollywood celebrities as well as YouTubers and all of that. But let's say that you want to achieve a certain objective. Shorts can help break that down. If it's a complex thing, you have a longish video, somebody's talking through it, you have one short that just explains one functional benefit, and it reaches out to people who care about it the most. And here's also where AI plays a very important role. So now in Insights Finder, which is something that marketers have access to when they are working with Google Ads, Gemini-powered insights are now have come in actually, which can be used to power through what creative and communication decisions you're going to make. And once you have access to that, you have VO3 to create assets at scale. I was talking to a colleague of mine who he manages this food player. It's a large-ish food player. I can't name the brand. And typically they work with their, they give a brief to their creative agency. The agency takes 2 to 3 weeks to come up with the first iteration. With VO3, and this is for a regional language asset that they created, and multiple assets depending on the cohorts. The first iteration took about 3 to 4 hours, and it was 90% there. It took 3 days for the remaining iterations to be done. It's all getting powered by AI insights, and it is then VO3 which is creating these assets and putting it out there in different languages. But what is interesting, and it has sparked intense conversations within that company, is that they are seeing 12 to 14% jump in purchase intent, which they never saw with their these 3-4 week creative agency made creative. So that sparked conversation because there is scale, there's efficiency, there is speed, there's agility, and you are seeing business results. So I think that is something which is interesting, and it is bound to be a game changer. So that's very creative. And then you have the Flipkart model where you create a nice 3-minute asset and you run that.
Got it. Speaking about the matrix or like the measurability bit that you were talking about, CTV or even short form as a medium, what are some of the biggest blind spots that, like a KPI blind spots that marketers have in today's day and age, and that is what they should be aware of? It's not there in their eye, but they should know of.
See, I think marketers overanalyze everything anyway. So it's not like they're missing a KPI. What I've observed is that thinking about KPIs across the entire journey makes a lot of sense. So you start still with, particularly if it's a big brand film, etc. You still think about sufficiency principles. You still start with reach and frequency. What is that critical reach frequency I need to deliver at what cost? You think about lifts, so brand lift, what is the awareness lift, what is the consideration lift. You think about, if you're running anything with creators on YouTube, at least you also have influencer lift metrics. So just as you measure for your brand made creative, you also have influencer lift studies. You have search lift. So for example, Oreo around Pongal partnered with creators for one of the new cookies that they were launching in Tamil Nadu market last year. And they saw an 8x jump in searches. That's a good metric because it's a lead indicator saying people are curious, you've seeded that curiosity. And then of course sales. So how are you going to measure sales? And there are a wide variety of tools. And then you have MMMs. I know it's very intense, you do this, but it's a very good way to study impact and ROI and efficiency. I think the pitfall is when you get married and over optimize for some one metric, which may or may not be tied to your outcomes. So for example, likes or VTR. So on YouTube, because we have both long form and that's our history, that's our lineage, that's what we were known for. Now when we have shorts, there is a tendency for people to say, hey, but the view through rate on shorts is so. Of course, the view through rate on shorts is going to be a lot different from the view through rates on the long form traditional ads. Is that benchmark the benchmark you use for measuring a fundamentally different user experience or a different ad format? So I think building in a little bit more flexibility and understanding, firstly, your outcome-based measurement has to be there. What are you doing, whatever you're doing for? Is it to create increase in searches? So a lot of the insurance category that I spoke about cares deeply because it's such a commoditized category. They care deeply about branded searches going up. So that's a good metric. It's an outcome-based metric. Are you looking for actual sales? It's a great outcome-based metric to look for. And then how do you optimize everything that goes in the way to indicate that this final metric will move? Versus being married to some intermediate metric and then not realizing that the format you're using is not going to do justice to that metric. And therefore, you need to tweak that a little bit based on the format. So I think that's one pitfall or that's one watch out.
That's interesting, and I think that is one of the key takeaways from this conversation for sure. We'll quickly wrap this up with a rapid fire. Shubha, it's not coffee with Karan, it's samosas with Hitesh or
There's no
chai
basket
with Hitesh.
coming.
Yeah, no, there is a hamper coming for sure.
Oh, how nice. Okay.
Yeah. Irrespective, actually.
Okay. Great.
So I'll start. One festive campaign that has appealed you the most, and like why is it so? And like you've already named Flipkart, but maybe you could name one more.
Yeah, I quite liked the Cadbury's Rakhi campaign. I, in general, like Mondelez campaigns because they're a great combination of tug at your heartstrings, but also very, very tech forward, very AI forward. They always break the clutter and do something very different. But I like their ad this time as well for Raksha Bandhan.
Got it. One common mistake you see brands making during the festive season?
Not really. Thinking about all the pieces. I always say begin with the why in mind. And I think the one place where people tend to falter is also orchestration. So you've got your formats in place, you've got your plan in place, you've got your strategy in place, but festive is a long haul, right? And depends. When do you want to amp up? When do you want to dial down? But if you start at Nag Panchami, like I said, assuming that that's when festive season kickstarts, and you're going to go through till your Black Friday sales and Christmas and New Year. You're preparing for the long haul. So when do you peak? When do you sustain? When do you pulse? That orchestration, I think, needs to be thought of rather than it being just, oh, let's do a Rakhi campaign, let's do something else, let's do something else. I think orchestration is one thing to think of.
One CTV and one short form trend that marketers should know of.
At least on YouTube, shoppability, interactivity in every form is going to be a trend. It's here to stay. We are going to be launching a lot of features which are going to, like if it's a creator, you can actually participate in the live stream with the creator. So there's going to be a lot of back and forth. So direct participation and a lot of interactivity in terms of your ability to take action, to shop, to request more information. All of that is a trend to watch out for, and it's going to be there for the next 1 year or so. On shorts, actually, the trends come and go, and the trends are oftentimes created on YouTube. So just making sure that you are plugged into those trends, or you are participating in creating those trends and partnering very closely with creators, that's something to do.
And lastly, one advice for the marketers in the room while they're stepping into this festive season.
I think we've said it enough, but please do think in terms of and rather than or. It's long form and short form, and it's CTV and the mobile phone.
Thank you, Shubha. Thanks a lot for your time. I hope the audience had a good learning experience.
Thank you so much. You were a very good audience.